well, here we are. And this first one, I was just trying to read from Kaitlyn about the Trend Micro Rootkit remover.
Yeah, no, so this is fantastic. There's the Trend Micro Rootkit remover, which is supposed to remove rootkits from your system. Yeah. And it installs itself as a driver. And the driver is so poorly written that you can essentially send it commands to install your own rootkits through the rootkit remover.
Yeah, well, Vincent Taviso found a bunch of these. A lot of these antivirus products work this way, and supposedly the Linux version of Zoom works this way. Right?
Yeah, no, a lot of these antivirus, anti-rootkit software requires so many privileges that if you take advantage of these privileges, you can essentially use these systems that are designed to protect you as a weapon against the user. So it's sort of like Captain America and his shield, except that he uses it as a weapon.
This is awesome.
Well, that's
what could go wrong.
For the last 10 years, they've been talking about this with antivirus. I mean, the one that just came out like a couple weeks ago was you can delete any file with antivirus.
Yes.
It scans the system, finds a file, and says, oh, better delete that. And the process comes later and deletes it with system privileges. So what could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is it's so easy to add code to any file to make it pop up as a virus. So there's that iCars or eCars line of text you can just throw in there, and then the antivirus will see it and like delete it. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I know there's a ransomware out now that's doing this too. It's using an untrusted driver that's still available, that's still signed, so you can use it to sneak code into the kernel.
Yeah, and the other thing too about signing these drivers, because obviously modern Windows drivers require signage. So it just, in my mind, all that means is that there's a paywall to create malware now. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it reminds me, I had to get a code signing certificate myself. I'm planning to do it so students will get badges for my classes. I'll just sign it like code. That seems like the thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not the normal thing to do, but it seems like the logical answer to me. So I'll find out how hard it is to get a code signing certificate. And then, oh yeah, this I was thrilled. See, Trump has been saying all along, this is just going to go away like magic. And now they explain why. And this takes me back to the 70s. This is the first thing I ever did on computers. First, I did stellar interior modeling, and then I did modeling for a spectrometer that I had at the time. And I learned how to do this from a friend of mine. I learned how to do polynomial fits. So if you have a bunch of data like this that has some kind of shape, you can try to put something through it. And so you can try to put a straight line through it. You can see that's not any good. So if you only care about mathematics and not about reality, the next thing is to just use polynomials, because it's very easy to quickly fit polynomials. So they just built it into Excel. The problem is polynomials are pretty much crap. So the parabola is basically just a straight line, because this doesn't have any curve that a parabola can fit. But if you switch to a cubic, then you get this. And this is what I found in the 70s, programming this stuff in Fortran on a mainframe, is polynomial fits just create these waves that aren't there. And obviously, by the way, this shit is a Poisson. You can see this. This is a very common random distribution, exponential growth and then a gradual decay afterwards. This is in fact a Poisson distribution. But anyway, Trump didn't like to hear bad news, so he got some idiot economist who's not any medical person who fit this curve, which just says it's going to hit 0 on May 15th because of this evidence. And this is what's guided our policy, and is still guiding our policy. And this is why all the states are opening, and everybody believes it's just going to vanish like magic. This is the cubic model. And this has been like an open secret in the administration. Rumors have been leaking out, just like there used to be another secret about 10 years ago, the Secret Patriot Act. There was the Public Patriot Act, and they said, oh, there's the secret provisions of the Patriot Act, and let us just take anything anywhere all the time. And there are secret provisions in the Patriot Act. And it was an open secret. There was a special, administrator level privilege Patriot Act that just let them do any damn thing they wanted to any time. And this has been the secret of the Trump administration, and he's still guided by this. So it's interesting stuff. This is a more realistic guide. This is what the real epidemiologists have, and this is a Poisson distribution. Rises like this thing gradually decays. But anyway, so I thought that was very charming. And here's the.
They didn't like the real one.
Rachel Maddow brought it up very nicely. And this is the chapter and verse. So this is what's guiding our policy. We are, and this is unprecedented in America to have a mad king just killing us, although it's certainly not unprecedented in global history. This is why my angry Democratic friends think I'm a terrible person for apologizing for Trump. And they say, this guy is horrible. And I said, well, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at the Civil War and King George and Nero, he's not that out of line. But the mad perverse of history, if he's the worst guy ever, he's not the worst guy ever.
No.
But he is the worst guy we've ever had in America. I think now he is. Before this, I said he wasn't actually much worse than some of the previous ones we've had in America. Now he seems to combine the worst of Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover did the same thing in the Great Depression. Just pretend it's going to go away and do nothing about it. Anyway.
The whole Great Depression?
Yeah, he advocated a strict monetary policy of austerity. That we can't be spending government money just because people are dying. That would be wrong, which is what Europe did in the last recession. Greece and everything. They said, we can't bail you out, not until you pay your bills plus interest. And they're like, but we have no job and we're dying. They said, well, tough. You should have thought of that. You should have planned for that. Anyway,
Meanwhile, how much money are we spending on corporate bailouts?
Well, $3 trillion, which was pretty much just swept up.
You can't talk about that.
Seems reasonable.
Well, that's what Obama did. Obama just printed a vast amount of money and just let the banks steal it. And it did solve the crisis. So at the time, I was very much against it, but TARP was the right move. Anyway, and since the administration is completely incompetent and can't actually handle claims of the people, the only thing you can do is just give it to banks and let banks give it to people. Anyway.
But banks, of course, won't give it to people. They will give it to corporations.
Well, yes, but
because it's a better investment.
Well, that's been a standard Republican position all along. Richard Nixon said this. He said, look, the only purpose of the president is foreign policy. Domestic policy is run by the corporations. That's how the Republicans see it. And in the Milton Friedman model of the world, they're not wrong. Anyway, it's we're living through, but this part of just letting people die and just lying about it is a new special hell, even beyond what normal Republicans would do. Although they're all going along with it now.
I just came across a story about that we'll talk about later today.
Okay. Good. Well, now we got Madonna, not Madonna.
I thought this was an interesting story. It's been ongoing. These scammers ransomwared a law firm, a celebrity law firm that had like Madonna and Lady Gaga and Trump's data and all these people. And one thing that was interesting was that last week they were asking for like $21 million and then they doubled it to $42 million. And the first thing that they mentioned last week, the biggest thing was that they had a bunch of dirt on Trump apparently, and they said that, okay, well that's the next set of celebrity data we're going to publish. And then they said, okay, well, actually, we're not going to publish it. We've been contacted by some private party that says they're going to buy it all. And we don't really care who pays, just as long as somebody pays. So we're going to just start auctioning these data sets off to the highest bidder, essentially. And because the law firm had decided, hey, we're not gonna pay you guys off. We don't negotiate with terrorists. That's it. So now they're just selling this data to the highest bidder, and they mentioned that somebody contacted them that was interested in buying all the Trump data, so they forged a deal with them that they're happy with, and they sold all that off. So
I wonder if it was TMZ.
Well, I thought I heard that there's nothing really exciting in there.
Wait, dirt on
the
Trump? I can't believe it. No.
The first dump.
Hard to believe, I know. But I thought that was pretty interesting. And, I'm curious who bought it all. Like, it seems like, I don't know. That's interesting. I thought that was pretty interesting.
I mean, the thing that's funny is that Trump is in this weird position where he has this cult of personality where it doesn't even matter if things come out that are bad about him. Like everyone knows that he like paid off adults, porn stars and did all this like,
Right.
sexual assault and whatnot. And they just don't care. It's like, okay.
Which is what made me think that it probably wasn't Trump or someone in his camp actually buying it. It's probably somebody else who will be very disappointed when they see the contents and they're like, oh, yeah, none of this is a surprise.
Yeah, they're going to be like, oh, wait, Trump isn't as rich as he says he is?
No way.
And then even let's say even there's kind of like bombshell revelations in there, and there's like, video footage of him eating babies or something, there'll be some kind of way to say, oh, that's not a trusted source. Oh, that's a deep fake. Oh, all of this is fake news made up. So, what does it matter in the end?
I'm impressed by this, where they claim that paying ransom is a violation of federal law. I don't think that's true. What about all the ransomware? Everybody pays it.
I know. Well, I think it's interesting. Certain states like New York, for example, are talking about making it illegal to pay, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, but this is paid for somebody else's data. That is probably illegal. Then you're receiving stolen property. They're probably right about
actually talking about how they're actually tossing around the idea of passing legislature saying that it's illegal to pay the ransomware companies.
Right.
But when you get breached.
Yeah, but it occurs to me what they're having here probably is illegal. You're not allowed to pay someone to hack someone else and steal their stuff, which is more or less what you'd be doing.
Right.
It'd be making you an accessory after the fact or something.
Right.
But the part amazing, they think they're going to get money from Madonna. Madonna, I don't think you could possibly embarrass her with anything. I mean,
right.
Totally out there with all this outrageous stuff. I mean,
and same with Lady Gaga. I imagine that they don't care at all.
Well, I suppose they probably been doing illegal financial things that they could get prosecuted for. That's the only thing I can imagine. I don't think anything like sexual or about their personal life would possibly matter.
I mean, maybe, but I'm not entirely sure that would even prompt an investigation because, again, consider the source. Like, that's not necessarily grounds to open a case.
Yeah. I think, these guys have got a point. Who used to do this was the Hustler guy. Larry Flint. He offered a bunch of money for anybody that could find dirt on Trump. I don't know if did he finally die? But he was always the guy that would go for this stuff. Anyway. All right, so Python. Yeah, Python is the #1 way to get a job from what I'm told. So anyway, this is one of Irvin's.
Yeah, Humble Bundle's doing a bunch of Python books.
Yeah.
Buy Python books.
Oh no, much more than many Python books.
Yeah, $15 you can buy the whole set. They have 3 different sets.
Yeah, Python is awesome. You can totally it's the best thing to learn. That's why I had some student who didn't know coding who was going to do my COBOL CTF, and I'm like, dude, this is only for lunatics. If you actually want to learn something useful, learn Python. I didn't mean to mislead you into thinking that the best thing to learn is COBOL. It's sort of the opposite.
Yeah.
Although there's something even worse. I just found Algol, which is even more insane than COBOL. That's really dead. The last version is from 1968. So
Very good.
I haven't yet written an Algol CTF, but I'm strongly tempted. Anyway. All right.
I have no idea how Python got as popular as it has gotten, but I do love it. It is a great language, and it is fun to work with.
Well, I read that 95% of coders say they really love Go. Go is their #1 language, but none of them ever use it. Everybody uses Python, and they hate it.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
really.
Yeah, They think Go is awesome. Although I tried using Go, and it kind of sucked. But anyway,
I mean, Go is fine, but I prefer C over Go unless you're doing concurrent programming.
Rust is what
Rust
developers say they want to use, but nobody uses it because it's too new and there's no libraries and no company uses it. They all think Rust is great. But
Rust is great, but but it's in a different category of programming languages. Like you have your compiled code languages like C and Rust, but those are for completely different projects that you would use Python for.
Right. Python is for rapid prototyping.
It's not even rapid prototype. It's for It's for complex scripting. So you have like, at least in like my kind of world of programming, like I have the very high level bash level scripts just to automate human tasks. And then you have below that, you have things like Ruby and Python for things where you don't need it to be optimized, but it needs to be a bit more complex than a shell script, right? And then you would go to something like C or Rust or Go if you need something fast and you want it in machine code, and you kind of want to understand like how it's going to work specifically on the computer. Like you don't need any magic in the background slowing things down.
Mm-hmm.
And like those, and Python is the leading programming language in that sort of middle space.
Yeah. Anyway, so here's this decompiler. Is this an official part of Visual Studio?
It is not an official part. It is a new add-on. So I put this on here because I've some of my colleagues have seen me use Visual Studio Code. I use it all the time in work. I use it as my default code editor. And the thing is, I very much don't like Visual Studio, the whole package, mostly because it's way too bloated. And most people who see me use it go, hey, no, I've seen like the 4 gigabytes of packages you have to download to get up Visual Studio. But I have to say, like, I am a big fan of Visual Studio Code because it's just an editor, but it works really well. And it works on like Linux, it works on Mac OS, works on every different platform. It's fantastic. And this adds decompiling tools. And I think this is a great idea. So what you can do is when you're developing software within the code editor or IDE, you can have a decompiler built in. So if you're working in something like Rust or Go, like we were talking about, you can then take the executable and then look at how you could reverse engineer it. That is cool.
Yeah, now I see it just connects it to Ghidra, which makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, and JADX and a few other ones too, I believe.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Ghidra I love decompilers. That's why I used to use Hopper, and now I use Ghidra. It's bloody awesome. Good. And then I just thought this is like a public service announcement. They brought this up. This is from Swift on Security. He wrote a page. One of the most common questions I get is like, I'm a non-technical home user. What should I do? And I have no clue. I say, well, the last thing you do is listen to anything I say about like the latest attack or something, because that's not what matters. It'd be something like use a password manager, get a Mac. So he actually wrote a thing here full of like a description for home users. So I was sort of glad to see it. And I was happy to see like registry cleaners. He just said, no, don't use them. They're a scam, which is true. And, this is good. This kind of reminds me of Violet Blue's Smart Girls Guide to Privacy. We need people who can tell like non-technical home users how to be a little more secure. And I'm not the guy for that. These guys are.
I'm so glad you have this article up, Sam. I'm right now writing an article about how to secure IoT devices.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at what you have to do. Essentially, you have to like create this separate subnet and with separate access points and everything. And I'm just like, no home user is gonna figure out how to do this. So.
Well, I met a guy and he paid like $200 for like an IoT home gateway. It was just a router with like a good firewall and a VPN or something. And I said, that's actually pretty smart. That's something that someone could do.
Yeah, no, we need,
and you'll be better off.
Yeah, we need much better equipment. Like there needs to be standards set up for this kind of stuff. Because right now, if you just go and buy a router or you go and buy a piece of consumer equipment, it's not set up to provide the security that a lot of users really need nowadays.
Yeah.
Like separate subnetting for IoT devices.
Yep. So anyway, I thought that was a very handy thing to have to send people to when they ask this question that's important, which I really can't answer. Anyway, and then Mercedes-Benz leaking their source code. Oh.
Yeah, so I thought this was pretty interesting. This kind of blew up a couple days ago where they'd essentially, again, incorrectly configured version control, leaving stuff open to the cloud. And it wasn't through any kind of like advanced hacking. It was just, this guy just used Google Dorks and found source code exposed to the cloud, and it's unclear how serious the impact of this is, but it is another it's just another example of how even major corporations that should be on top of this stuff are totally not on top of this stuff.
Yeah. A lot of people I know are surprised at all the breaches in the latest Verizon report. And this is usually what happens. It's nothing complicated. It's that your own staff forgot to put any password on it at all or something like that. They just left it hanging in the breeze.
Right.
That's very hard to stop. I mean, you have thousands of workers. They're all rushing to hit deadlines. How can you make them all go through some audit? Who's doing that? Who's making sure it really got done for every little thing before it became public? It's just organizational. It's administrative.
Yes, and the biggest issues that I see here are that it may include some code that allows for remote management of these systems, and that could be a little problematic. The other thing is that usually when I'm no expert, but with a little bit of dabbling that I've done with automotive hacking, usually the way this goes down is researchers have to spend a lot of time fuzzing the various sensors and components of the car to figure out what memory address is where, and this could really streamline that process for them.
Yeah, reminds me of the Cisco dump years ago, where the guy dumped how the internal Cisco security worked, and so it saved you all the time of guessing.
Yeah, and another thing I thought was interesting about this is that they mentioned vans, and my thought first immediately goes to Sprinter vans, and which is those are used around the world by all kinds of different corporations and in corporate fleets and stuff like that. So this could get interesting.
Yeah. All right, let's see. That's Mercedes, and now we got the Air Force. Oh yeah, this one. Is this the DEF CON one?
Yep, it's a DEF CON one.
Okay.
They are going to do it virtually.
Good.
Looks like the qualifiers are this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And yes, so what was going to be a on-site thing at DEF CON will go virtual, just like everything else.
Yep. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, this looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
For those, if you're watching, make some teams and go play.
The Cyber Resiliency Office for Weapons Systems, CROW.
Or pros.
All
I'm
right.
wondering if they'll also have any of the ship. Like last year, they had a Hack the Sea village that had like a ship's bridge on it and stuff like that. And I guess there was F-15 controls there as well. I wonder if they'll have any stuff like that set up. I was really impressed with the way that the car hacking village has been able to move stuff online. I wouldn't have thought that was as easily possible as it is. And one thing I noticed in that article, so one thing it mentioned was that those dumps contained Raspberry Pi images. And at first I'm like, that's interesting. But that's how the car hacking village has their remote event set up, is essentially you just SSH into a Raspberry Pi that's connected to the CAN bus unit locally, wherever the car is at. So made me wonder if they use that sort of testing set up for everything.
Yeah, it sounds great. Should be a lot of fun. And then we got a whistleblower.
Yep.
From Apple. Boy, those people usually get fired fast.
Yeah, I'm assuming this person actually quit already, which is why this person can whistleblow. So what happened is Apple was collecting Siri data. So when you speak into Siri,
Right.
the data goes to the central AI and it gets processed there. And Apple does recordings to, quote unquote, ensure that the transcriptions are correct, so they can verify things are correct.
Right.
And this is done without people's knowledge. And so they actually had people in Apple centers listening to these Siri recordings that people were, and a lot of times it wouldn't be activated by anybody, so they would have, these people would have normal conversations, and these people at Apple would be listening in. And this guy was like, no, that's not okay. And that's where this whole whistleblower complaint comes in. So this guy quit his job, said, hey, this is not right. Apple said that they were going to clean up their act, and apparently they did not.
Well, I thought, yeah, I mean, I thought the general point, this came out years ago, that if you try every one of these smart speaker things, it is listening to everything you say and sending it to God knows who. Mm-hmm. And if you get one of the toys for your kids, it's recording everything your kid says.
Right. Yeah. It just proves that that's still true.
It's still true. It's happening even at places like Apple. It's not just shady organizations. And not only is it being recorded and then, sent to an AI, like that's very different than having it being recorded and then listened to by actual people for, quality assurance reasons or whatever.
Right.
Oh yeah. I have tape to put over the camera, and there ought to be some way to like deactivate the speaker.
Right. One of the things I like about this speaker, let me turn around. There's this button here. If I push it, you will suddenly not be able to hear me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, I can disable the webcam with a lid.
Yeah.
And this thing, but there's still other microphones connected to my computer that I can't do anything about.
Yeah.
And so, we really need. And then how do you stop like Siri? I don't know. This is too much.
Well, I heard a few years ago, the Army was trying really hard with great difficulty to find computers to buy that did not have a webcam or a microphone installed at all.
So Sam,
not a bad plan.
So
did you
Sam,
just turn on Siri?
By accident, yes. Right now we were talking about her.
What did she do?
I heard it.
Yeah. No, while we were talking, I mentioned Siri's name, and she's like, "Please talk. I'm listening."
Oh yeah.
Right now.
That I thought was one of the first hacks. In a session like this, I could say, Siri, reboot her computer or something. It would happen. Yeah, I know. You got headphones for that, yeah. But you can do it to me, except everything I have is dumb, kind of like my car. Anyway, so. Well, all right. But I mean, well, of course, what can Apple do? I mean, they have to have people.
They could not listen to the conversations by humans.
Well, they have to have
they could make it
control. Just like when you call on the phone, they say your conversation may be monitored by quality control. That's not unreasonable.
Well, it's not entirely clear.
The thing is, it's always on.
Yeah.
It's not something that is sleeping and not listening, not recording until a trigger word. It has to stay on to listen for the trigger word. And then that part of the listening, it's still transmitting that out.
But suppose there's a problem with it hearing the trigger word. How are you supposed to diagnose that if you don't listen to
That's what beta testing is for. You don't do beta testing on the general population. You get people who agree and sign waivers, and they know exactly what's up. You don't just throw this product out there and tell them, "Oh, Siri's
Although
gonna."
that is a very interesting way to get some free labor. Hey, let's just put the product out, and while it's out and about, we'll get the data that we would have done by paying people in the beta test.
Well, I remember when it first came out that all these webcams are just available, and Dan Tentler and other people made these websites, you can browse through them. I thought, wow, what a privacy invasion. And then when you look at them, they're all dull as dishwater. They're like an empty car park, an intersection. I mean, if you could listen to what everybody's saying in their house, what are the chances that anyone would ever care? I mean, you're just listening to random people. I'm sure 99.9% of it is just ordinary conversation of no importance. If you wanted to find something to blackmail someone with, I don't think you could find it. Anyway, I'm just.
I never mentioned anything about blackmail, and that's not the issue. The issue is that you have essentially people listening in on private conversations that you don't realize or haven't consented to, regardless of whether or not it's important or not. Like right now, I know that this is going to get published on the web. And I know other people are going to listen, but I'm not entirely either thinking about or aware that when I was talking to you now, that Siri was going to listen and then give an error and then probably send that conversation to someone to listen to at Apple. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess I'm just thinking, I think if I was a lawyer in court, I would have great difficulty proving that there was actual harm here.
I don't think that there's a potential for harm, but it's very slim.
I think in this case, it's more of a issue with informed consent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you signed, I'm sure you agreed to some long thing that probably
So here's the thing, Sam. If you're gonna get very legal, you need to remember that all those end user license agreements don't hold up in court. You can say whatever you want in those end user license agreements. Every judge knows people don't read those.
Well, and of course, what really matters is public opinion. And Apple has positioned themselves as the huge protector of privacy. That's why they won't even let the FBI in the phones of terrorists, which just came out again this week. So Apple will probably react very strongly to this kind of bad press because this is exactly the image they do not want.
Right.
So I think that'll work, but I don't think it's really a matter of the law. Although in Europe, it would be. GDPR actually gives them a right to privacy, which we don't really have in America.
Don't we have something like that in California, though?
Now we supposedly do. I'm not sure it took effect yet, but yes.
It's supposed to take effect in June.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody had 6 months to get up to speed for it. And then in June, it's supposed to take effect, but I don't remember how it's going to really be enforced.
Well, nobody knows, but I do suspect that this is probably then going to be a violation of that regulation in California. They'll have to do something. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens, what comes of it. And then I've got, right. Yeah, qubits, quantum is my big thing. You know, I did my thesis on quantum mechanics and stuff. So I'm always watching the development of quantum computing. So quantum, many things are a problem with quantum computing. And one of the big ones is there's way too much noise. So these guys have finally made low noise quantum bits. Right now, the error has been like 1% or something, which is terrible. I mean, if you had a 1% chance of a bit flipping wrong, you'd never get anywhere. You have to spend all your time correcting errors rather than doing calculations. And he managed to take that down to like 0.03% or something. So it's a huge step forward, getting quantum bits more practical. Still not at all what you need to really get too far, but it's a big step forward. And an even bigger step, I think, is these guys that have finally got quantum computing at room temperature. Because the current quantum computer has to be less than 1 degree Kelvin, which is incredibly expensive, to where it's totally impractical. But what these guys have finally done is they have carefully made glass with little pits in it so they can send in light, and the light will get trapped at the intersection because it's a nonlinear glass where the two photons interact. So this is what you need. You need to use light in glass so that it can operate at the quantum level without being cooled the way optical fiber does. So this is a big step forward. This is, I think, the only practical way to do quantum computing at room temperature. Anyway, so it'll be interesting to see. This may be the technology that actually leads to an affordable, practical quantum computer. And when I put this on Twitter, people said, is there any quantum effects at room temperature? And I know there are. So I just thought it was good to see the tunnel diode video. In case anybody doesn't know this, this is the simplest. This is a diode that uses quantum mechanics at the at room temperature, and it turns out to be very useful. When you have a diode, you have electrons on one side and holes on the other side, because these are semiconductors doped with different impurities. So you have effective positive charges here that are holes left over, and if you can adjust the voltage, and that moves this relative to that. So if the holes are completely below the level of the electrons, then no current can flow, because there isn't enough voltage to lift this up to that level. But if you increase the voltage a little more and get it to here where there is some overlap, then an electron, a hole from this side could move over here and exist there, but it can't get there because the barrier is too high, and then it uses quantum mechanical tunneling to get through, which is the miracle of tunneling. You can get through a barrier that you don't have the energy to climb over by leaking through if the barrier is so thin that your wavelength is less than the thickness of the barrier. So now you get a degree of tunnel current. But if you increase the voltage a little more, then you get less current because there's less overlap here. And when you increase it even more, then you get this level where you're totally above it. And now there is, in principle, these particles can survive over there, but the only way to get there is now to climb over the barrier, which takes a lot of energy. So you get this region of negative resistance. And this turns out to be extremely useful to make really fast electronics have components with negative resistance. Another one is the memristor. These things are awesome. Anyway, so this turns out to be the way to make a fast switch, and it works fine at room temperature. So anyway, just thought I'd mention it. Just the light switch in your house also works by quantum mechanics. There's a layer of copper oxide on the outside of a copper conductor that is higher than the voltage pushing through it, and it's that tunneling that's going through there carrying the current, at least under some conditions. Anyway, so I'm watching the improvement of quantum devices with interest, but right now they're not a risk. Everybody suspects in 10 or 20 years, they'll make our current cryptography impractical.
So one thing I kind of am wondering now is how do Zener diodes manage to have that voltage cutoff where it blocks the flow unless it gets to a certain voltage? Is it that same quantum tunneling?
I don't think they're tunneling, but it's a similar process where you're lining these two things up. I forget. I knew it once years ago.
Okay.
But it has a similar effect that there's a cascade and a huge current at one point. So you have a really high amplification in a certain range.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, this is pretty awesome stuff. And by the way, this stuff is very badly understood at the fundamental level. One of the guys I thought I worked for in graduate school is a guy one thing that happens when you make semiconductors is you put in like 1% lead and you get one effect. You put in 1.01% lead, you get a totally different effect. You put in 1.02% lead, you get a totally different effect, and nobody understands why. But fundamentally, it's because it rearranges the little crystals into a totally different lattice structure, a tiny amount of a different impurity, so that it is not at all linear or simple to model at all. You're creating basically crystals or glasses, and the actual electrical effect depends on what the orientation of it is. It's not that different than protein folding, which is what I did, where you create this structure, and it is very difficult to measure it and very difficult to know what it will do, and a small change can have a big result. Anyway, and then we got, the supercomputer hacks.
Yeah, so this was kind of an interesting story this week. It started out that all these high-performance computing clusters were being attacked in labs all over the world, really. And it's rare because most of these are just like when we went to Lawrence Berkeley lab, it's like these are, Cray supercomputers, and usually those aren't attacked. So the first thought that came out was, we don't think that the Crays are being attacked necessarily, but the infrastructure around them, which makes a lot of sense, especially because in a lot of these, that's all assembled and managed by HPE, which is kind of a circus lately in terms of this stuff. And so the initial stories came out, and it's funny because my first thought was, I wonder if they're using these for crypto mining. And then some follow-up stories came out, and it turns out they were using them for crypto mining. Essentially, they had a lot of the users were using unsecured private SSH keys, no passwords, and the attackers were able to access these and gain privilege escalation, and they Monero miners that were in, and it was pretty clever. They installed them and set them up so that they would only run at night, and then also installed some log wiping software so that texts would come in the morning, and then it wouldn't necessarily appear that anything had gone wrong. So pretty interesting stuff.
Well, to add insult to injury, the reason this attack was able to happen is because a lot of these supercomputers are being transitioned to work on COVID and protein folding, like you were saying, Sam. So essentially, these crypto miners are taking away resources that could have gone towards finding a cure for COVID-19.
Yes, and I see the group Watchbog. That's what I wondered, because I've been doing the attack framework, so I'm getting to know these groups. I didn't know Watchbog. I have to see if they're known. Anyway, that's good. Neat, very interesting stuff. And so I think we were here So we're down to Irvin's last one, which is a new Bluetooth. Yeah, BIOS. I was just reading about the BIOS.
Yep, a new one. It works by spoofing the pair after the fact.
So you can pretend to be a Bluetooth device like a keyboard or something and issue commands?
Right, that has already been paired.
Oh, that sounds
Yeah.
pretty bad. So you could walk around and like spy on everybody's, well, if you,
So it's like a USB rubber ducky, but you don't even have to plug anything in. That's amazing.
Right.
that's true. So you could like, and there was a guy that made a blue sniper rifle about a year ago that he could sit at the top of a building and he could pick up the Bluetooth from keyboards in a bank across the block. But that stuff was encrypted. But I don't know if encryption will stop this. If it's the handshake that identifies the device, that's probably not encrypted.
Right. I mean, and at that point, if you can spoof the paired device, then, you know, anything that goes through it, it'll go through as if the thing, you know, the legitimate item, and who cares about encryption? It's working just fine.
It sounds awesome.
There's already a CVE out for it.
Oh yeah, we got to try this. That'd be fun.
But yeah, it's got a fun one.
Yeah. All right, and then we've got we've been this one. So making wait, am I going to the right place? I think I am. Making ventilators out of car parts. Okay.
Yeah, so just really quickly, I just want to give a shout out to these teenagers. They are making ventilators out of car parts, which is a great hack. And I think that they deserve some credit for that.
Oh yeah, it sounds good. It reminds me of all the 3D printer people that are helping make ventilator parts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Not entirely, super newsworthy, but they need a shout out. That's all.
Oh, nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
I think it's newsworthy.
And Liz had this one about coronavirus that looked pretty awesome.
Well, so to follow up with Kaitlyn's feel good story, I have some feel bad stories.
Oh, good.
Just to balance things out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this will shock everyone, but there's been some data manipulation going on.
Yeah.
No way.
I know. Stop the presses. I know you're shocked. Just take a deep breath before we move on, because I know it's. I'm dropping bombs here.
See, I think data manipulation is for the weak. The pros, like Trump, just blast lies without bothering to manipulate the data, and it's more effective. This is an amateur form of social engineering. The pros just don't even care about the data. Anyway.
Right. I mean, if you can just surround your bad data with impassioned rhetoric, like that's way more effective than cooking the books. But there's also plenty of cooking the books going on, and I think that it's kind of crazy. It's getting to the point where people are so used to being lied to by the government and the news media that they will either just accept everything at this point or not, or distrust everything. And, it happens so much that it's almost like this news is no longer newsworthy just because it's happening so frequently.
Yep.
It's like shootings at Compton.
Yeah, there's definitely.
What's that, Irvin?
It's like shootings at Compton. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's just crazy to me because, this is one situation where a lot of the data that we have to begin with is already pretty bad, because we really don't have an accurate, we really don't have an accurate picture of how many cases there have been. There are a lot of people who probably had it and recovered, or, died from it maybe from related complications before people started testing and stuff like that. So, it's kind of crazy in that even the best data isn't great. But then you see stuff like these stories where, especially the second one that you found, Sam.
This one here, the Georgia one. Yeah.
The Georgia one, yeah. This right here is like To me, this is one of the yet another illustration of why I think that taking a statistics class should be a mandatory part of getting a 4-year degree. You know, people, even very educated people, sometimes don't understand, you know, how statistics can be misleading or presented in a misleading way. And you know, I would say that, well, maybe it doesn't matter, but I think it does matter because policy decisions are being made based on these things.
Yeah, and the thing about this one is they just rearranged the dates at random to make it look like it was going down, which is
right.
And then, you know, Trump, when he got in, he made them remove the climate data from the NOAA website so they would not show that the Earth was warming. And people resigned over this sort of stuff. It's this is a big issue, but I think this is why the thing that worries me the most is when Trump does things like tell people he's taking that drug, Cloroxy, whatever the hell it is, when it's obviously garbage. He says, I believe it because somebody told me it works, and that matters more than what doctors say. And the thing I'm watching with the whole Republican Party now is anti-science, anti-intellect. This is what Mao did, and I'm kind of worried there will come a time when they take the scientists and stick them in a coal mine because science is just evil and education is just evil, and everybody should just believe lies on conspiracy places like Alex Jones and all the conspiracy theories that Trump makes up. And it's just, I wouldn't have thought that so many Americans would love this stuff, but apparently 40% of America is totally on board with living with the Weekly World News and a National Enquirer being your source of knowledge and just kick the kids out of school. And
this has been going on this has been going on for a long time now, Sam. I mean, the most disheartening thing that I've seen are the homeschooler movement, where it wasn't, and homeschooling I think can be really wonderful for a lot of kids. And I'm not trying to say that homeschooling is bad, because it can be really great. And a lot of the like top like spelling bee champions have all been homeschooled. Like, it's great, but a lot of parents are taking their kids out of school because they don't want their kids to be essentially educated.
Corrupted by the science.
Right. Yeah.
Is another big part of it.
Exactly. But of course, that was a big movement back in like the 90s. And then you also have, of course, there was the creationism big movement a while ago, but now it's
intelligent design.
Intelligent design.
And,
I mean, it's
and the way that, you know, this administration, I mean, I knew there were going to be problems right off the bat when Betsy DeVos was put in charge of education. And it's only snowballing. That's going to get worse and worse. But I mean, it makes sense because, you know, stupid people are easier to manipulate and control. So, you know.
Trump famously said, I love the poorly educated.
Yeah.
I can see why.
Yeah, I know this is going to shock you, but I greatly offended somebody. I went to a conference and there was another teacher that said, he was a cybersecurity teacher. He said, I've been teaching my class about intelligent design. And I said, you know, the students trust you to tell them the truth, and here you are telling them lies and betraying them. He remembered that years later, giving a talk about how I'm a rotten guy. But
why would a cybersecurity teacher be teaching a class about intelligent design?
You can tie anything in, like Violet Blue tried to give a talk about sex and drugs in a security conference. You can say, oh, it teaches them like to think about things and do threat modeling or something. You can tie anything in. But,
right.
But I said, you know, you shouldn't be teaching them complete lies. Like Trump is now telling people to go get this dangerous drug and take it and ignore what your doctor says. And 40% of Americans will just follow him like lemmings. So it's, although I do hear, I don't know if it's true, that some of the old people are beginning to have doubts about Trump because he's clearly just throwing them over to die. So apparently his statistics among old voters are going down. I would sure hope that's true.
But I mean, I don't know. He's got a pretty good track record of getting people to vote against their own self-interest just by pulling up a scarier boogeyman that he's against. You know, whether that's, you know,
Obamagate.
Villainizing people of color or, you know, the Obamagate. Great example.
How is Obamagate doing? Because everything prior, he's been able to do in his rallies. but now not having any more rallies and just pretty much using Twitter and facing the press corps. How is Obamagate doing?
Well, he's doing it all carefully planned to stir up his base because he's losing his base. That's what I heard. I heard today on they had an emergency meeting of Republican lawmakers. They called them in. They didn't even get tested or wear masks. They called them all in an emergency, and they thought it was going to be about coronavirus, and it was about Trump talking about his poll numbers and demanding that they ramp up supporting his conspiracy theories about Obamagate to rally up his base so he can win the election. That's his big concern. And he got in by suggesting Obama was not born in America. I mean, he's trying to come up with a new conspiracy theory to rile those guys up. But I think
haven't actually heard
actually dying. Yeah.
I haven't actually heard. I still haven't actually heard what the big scandal is.
The idea is that Obama investigated Trump because when he was winning the office, there became severe because of Flynn. Flynn was in secret talks with the Russians, which he was lying about, and the National Security Advisor did talk to Obama towards the end of his office, saying, I'm not sure we can trust this guy. And they're saying that is betrayal.
But I thought that none of this was new info.
No, none of it is. But they're trying to spin it up as Obama trying to sabotage Trump and tie it in with the impeachment and everything, which is, I think, something that the right wing enjoys hearing. Like they blamed everything on Hillary. And of course, a lot of people have been resisting Trump at every level of the government. He absolutely has had a less loyal cabinet, less loyal government all the way through. There's an enormous number of people all through the government that hate Trump and try to block everything he does. He's right about that.
This really reminds me of like a storyline in professional wrestling or a soap opera or something where it's really not at all about the matters at hand or the facts of anything. It's really just about manipulating the masses. And the worrisome thing to me is that people just seem to be eating it up.
Yes. That's why I'm not really that mad at Trump. There have always been people like Trump. There was Huey Long.
Yeah,
the thing is, how did he ever win? I mean, there's always been less than 1% American Nazis, but they don't win. The fact that he won and the fact that we have essentially the same guy in UK and Brazil, it means it's a global problem. Something about the current situation has created some kind of desperation where people are jumping to this populism. And it's happened many times before in history. And I heard an analysis that sounded pretty good, which you people would know. We totally doomed the next generation. Most of my students can't get a job. They can't pay their rent. They can't start a family. This is a new thing. It used to be that if you just got C's in school, you could get a job and you could pay the rent. Somehow that's not true anymore. And this does make people crazy, I think.
But that's, too, that's been going on for quite some time also. They did a study of Gen Xers back in it was like 2004 or 2007. And they found that even at that point, they were already making like 12 to 15% less than their parents, adjusted for inflation at that time. And that was before the 2008 recession, and it's only getting worse and worse. And I think that a lot of the previous generation still really has this. They have sort of this like romantic Horatio Alger style perception of how they just pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and made everything happen through sheer will and determination and hard work, and that subsequent generations are just lazy. And that's why it's like this. And I think like that is a very skewed perception that's really being encouraged by Trump and his cohort.
Yeah. I think when people are desperate, then they are willing to jump on something like blame another race or something for all their problems.
Can we also sort of give some credit to Cambridge Analytica for this situation?
Oh, big time. Yes, that is a great point. Fantastic point.
Well, yeah, but I think there's always been right-wing and extreme news media, the popularity.
Well, no. This is very different, Sam. So there's always been this sort of low-lying Nazi threat in society,
Yeah.
and I get that. What Cambridge Analytica did is they weaponized it.
Well, sure, but the left could weaponize it too. I think they got outmaneuvered. The people on the right were somehow more efficient at weaponizing social media, which is kind of strange because I don't think of them as the technological champions.
Well, they're not, but there's an ethical issue involved in sort of manipulating the public, which I think a lot of people on the left are like, maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should take this slowly. Whereas I think there are a lot of, okay, let's just call them Nazis. There are a lot of Nazis out there that saw this new technology and were like, finally, we can rise up, and just went for it right away. And that's part of the issue of why there's so many.
I think the other thing about that is that this is a whole DoD division, is information warfare, because one of the guys that used to work in that division explained it to me. Of course we have that, because when you go into a hostile territory, the only way that you're going to be able to maintain persistence there is to manipulate local opinion in your favor. So, even I do not dispute, I think the Cambridge Analytica point's a great point, but also this is also a series of weapons that we've been developing and using on other cultures for a very long time, and all they're doing is redirecting it towards American citizens. So it actually doesn't surprise me that this is been a pretty hardcore right-wing tactic, and they're out in front of it because the technology is already there. They already know about it, and all they're doing is redirecting it.
Right.
Well, I suppose it's just a professional bias, but my feeling is the solution is for people on the left to get better social engineers and perform better attacks. That's what we should have. We should have more carefully crafted campaigns promoting logic and good things. It shouldn't be that impossible to do.
It's not impossible, but I'm going to tell you, like, one of the things that has greatly concerned me about modern society, and it doesn't seem to be on many people's radars, is the fact that we have psychologists and we have trained professionals doing a lot of research in the best way to manipulate people. In fact, when I was doing corporate red teaming, we had someone specifically on the red team who had a background in psychology, who knew how to craft the perfect phishing emails, who knew how to craft, the perfect campaigns to get people to change their behaviors. And we have these people not only, on red teams manipulating people. We have people working for Nazi organizations. We have people working for political campaigns who know all this stuff, who can just outwit us, hand over foot. And every day we're just being manipulated. And if you look at, for example, your phone and like your mobile apps and the way that they're specifically designed to get you to keep coming back every day and keep pushing money and putting money in, it's insidious.
I mean, even if you watch the pressers that have been happening with the White House, the questions from the reporters are thinly veiled propaganda most of the time, and then the responses are even less thinly veiled propaganda. So, I mean, this has just become it's so quickly become just a part of daily life. So much so that like I was saying earlier, people are just used to it.
This is nothing new in a time of conflict. It was like this in the Vietnam War.
No, I mean, this is the level at which we're able to sort of do research and know how to manipulate people is higher than ever before. We're not just sitting.
Oh, I was just going to say the issue with what I think, Sam, I understand where you're coming from as far as the other side needing to mount a counter campaign of manipulation to get people to believe in logic and science and maybe not do stupid things. The only problem there is that the reason these campaigns are so effective is because they play on people's most basic animal fears. And I think that it's hard to it's easier to get people to do what you want when you motivate them with, deep existential fear versus, it's a harder sell to get people to believe, to like, hey, be like, hey, slow down, let's look at this in a logical fashion and maybe not do the stupid thing. It's much easier to get people scared and get them to do rash and dumb things than it is
This
to get
is the role of educators. And
I mean, look at advertisements, Sam. In the 1950s, 1960s, people sold products based on what those products could do. You would say, this car is a great value. You have, 4-wheel drive built into a chassis that's lighter and safer than ever, and you should buy our car. And nowadays, advertisers are much smarter. They know you don't care about the logics. You don't care about the facts. You want to know how that car makes you feel. Yeah. So now everything's about like identity.
But
like
that's what it was in the 50s. People.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. You go look back at those 1950s ads. Especially the cigarette commercials where they're like smoking cigarettes and saying, "Oh, these cigarettes are so smooth. Ooh, yeah, I love these cigarettes." Right. If there's a lot of science that goes into marketing, and logic. Absolutely. Yeah, logic does not play a part in advertising anymore. Yeah, people are not looking. Yeah, psychology is what drives it. So it's when you create a modern ad, it's all about identity. What this product can do to make you stand out. Yeah. And it's about how this product can make you feel, and there's a lot of psychology that goes into making people feel less than, and that they need this product in order to feel good about themselves.
So it's just a system, and you have to hack it.
Well, I mean, I think we need more than just hackers. I think we really need an organized resistance against modern manipulation and information tactics.
Okay. Well, anyway, maybe I better stop the recording. Any other comments?
Irvin wanted to make a comment.
I don't think so. Well,
I love watching you guys fight about this. This is fun.
Okay.
I'm just eating popcorn watching this.
Okay.